Thanks very much for that. And hello, everybody, and welcome to this briefing session for BTEC Sport and Exercise Science sector. My name's Jenny Stafford Brown. I'm the product manager for the sports sector within the BTEC qualification suite. And I'm also joined by Penny Lewis, who's going to be here supporting on the chat function to see if there's any sort of support we can offer via chat or through the presentation. Thank you all for joining on a Friday afternoon. I know it's probably not ideal in terms of the timings. We have run a variety of these, and obviously this is the one that you could join today. So do appreciate you joining on a Friday afternoon. The session is going to last, we've done this before, and it kind of took around 40 minutes or so. So just so you get an understanding as to how long we're going to be taking in terms of the information we're going through with you today. We do have the chat function that we're going to be using. That's the main method we'll be looking to communicate with you in terms of questions you may have coming in, rather than using mics, which can sometimes be a little bit difficult to navigate, and it's just easier to use the chat function. So whilst we are happy to have questions coming in, it's probably best if I can ask if you could wait to the end of the session, because you'll hopefully find that most of the questions you do have will actually be covered during the presentation and the slides that we have for you. So if you do have questions, make a note, and then we do have time at the end where we're going to take some questions, and I'll respond to the ones coming in via chat. The session is focused on sport and exercise science, but the sector does include sports, because whatever's happening to sport and exercise science is also happening to sports. So if you are a sports person and want to find out about what's happening within that sector, we are going to be covering that as well. If you have attended the sport briefing, we are going to be saying pretty much exactly the same. The message is the same across sport and exercise sciences. We have made them different to sort of confirm the focus of each, but because there is no differences in terms of the reform currently within sport and exercise sciences, if you've attended the sport briefing, you may want to think, actually, I'm going to give myself a bit of time back and just use the slides and the information you were presented with in the previous session. So won't be offended if you do decide to make different use of your time if you have attended a previous session. Okay, for those of you who haven't attended a briefing session or do want to have a bit of reminder from what you heard previously, we're just going to go through what I'm covering in this briefing. There is going to be a little bit of background as terms of what's gone on, so you can understand the context and understand it's not just Pearson making changes for the sake of it. There has been some clear direction and clear requirements that have resulted in having us to have some changes going forward. But also to reassure you, there's a lot of things going to remain the same, and indeed for the next 2 academic years in addition to this academic year. So we're looking at what has resulted in the reform and what may be happening in the future is where we're going with this presentation. We're going to give you some ideas for planning a curriculum for the next 2 years, knowing what we know is definitely going to be in place, and also cover the resources and support that is available for these qualifications. We'll finish with some useful links and also next steps. And at the end, that's where we're going to really focus on the Q&A. Any questions that are coming in, we'll make sure that we can respond to those at that particular part of the session. Okay, so the context is, you can see there has been something of a vocational reform timeline. I'm giving you a bit of background here, partly to support what's going to be happening for the future, so you can understand some of the terminology that we will be using going forward when we're looking at vocational reform. So essentially, it was in 2021 when the reform really started to be looked at and explored in terms of the landscape, what was going to happen with level 3. And essentially there's been a drive from the Department for Education to move qualifications into an academic framework and a technical pathway. And this was primarily due to the launch of the T-level qualifications. You may have heard of T-levels. We don't have a T-level within our sport and exercise sciences sector. There's nothing available in that space, which means we haven't been as affected as perhaps some of the other sectors. However, we do have going forward, we know that there is a drive to have academic qualifications, which are going to be called alternative academic qualifications. So some new jargon that we'll be starting to introduce that you may want to get used to at this point. We're also going to have technicals, which are qualifications which are aligned to occupational standards. So that's what's happening with BTEC qualifications in the future. Okay, they're going to move into alternative academic qualifications and technicals. In 2022, we then had information from the Department for Education in terms of how this reform was going to take shape. And we were made aware that there'd be cycles of submitting different sectors. Now, in cycle 1, that was published to be more of the health and social care and areas that weren't sport, but we did have an area of interest, which was health and fitness. So cycle 1 for us is sport and exercise sciences, is related to qualifications that sit in health and fitness related sector. We then heard in 2023 that the qualifications we did submit in cycle 1 were approved for funding. And I'm going to share with you what they look like at level 3 and level 2. In 2024, the cycle approach was disrupted somewhat, whereby we had a general election and a change in government, which has impacted on subsequent cycles, cycle 2 and cycle forwards cycles, because the new government are taking a look at what was put in place and confirming that they're happy with that and making some changes. There is a review being carried out at the moment in response to that. So the rapid review took place in July 2024 in terms of what's happening and what happened to the cycle 1 qualifications. We weren't impacted by this in any shape or form, but other sectors have been impacted. In terms of the rapid review, there has been some drives for future facing cycles and what they're going to look like. But the key outcome is we do have qualifications sit in technical qualifications cycle 1 that are going to be ready for first teach in September 2025. So they are predominantly in the sports sector and they're within health and fitness. So we have got those and they have been approved. We've also heard that there's no longer going to be the restrictions that were in place for the study programs. There were some restrictions initially prescribed, which have now been scrapped. So going forward, when we do have AAQs, there is going to be much more flexibility for you to offer with your learners. In terms of the cycle 1 qualifications that were approved, these have been approved and are ready for teaching in September 2025. So these are level 2 technical entry qualifications that you may want to consider if you are teaching cross sport qualifications as well as sport and exercise sciences. So these are all internally assessed. They are 360 guided learning hours and they will equate to 3 GCSE equivalencies. So it may be something that you want to consider for September 2025. You can see there are 3 available and they are mapped to occupational standards, and the title gives a clear direction as to what that occupational standard is. So the first one on the left here, you can see this is leading community activities, and it's all about a coaching qualification to support working predominantly in the community to encourage physical activity and sports participation. We then have the gym instructor's qualification here. And this is a license to practice whereby we've worked with CIMSPA and we have made sure that we've embedded the occupational standards fully, and it's a recognised qualification for working in the industry in health and fitness as a gym instructor. And then we also have a recreational assistant diploma, and then again that's been mapped to the occupational standard for recreational assistants. If that's something of interest, then we are going to be offering some training events later on this year to prepare you for teaching these qualifications. The level 3 that was submitted and approved is the level 3 technical occupational entry for personal trainer, and that's diploma size, so the equivalent of 2 A levels. And there's an overview of what it looks like. The units that are available, all are mandatory and all are internally assessed. So again, it's on the Pearson website and something you may want to consider for delivery in the next academic year or further along in the future. The key message really, however, for many of you is that the funding list for sport and exercise sciences is remaining the same. And what that means is we have confirmation from Department for Education that these qualifications, all of these shown here that have a yes in the first teach box for 24-25, that's this academic year. 25-26 is from September this year through to the next year, and then the following September 26 through to 27. So we have confirmation these qualifications on this list have been approved for funding for the next 2 academic years. I've highlighted the ones that are specific to sport and exercise science so we can see all sizes that are currently available will continue to be available for the next 2 academic years at the very minimum. The only area that has been affected is where we have the diploma size in personal training. This qualification here, the BTEC Level 3 National Diploma in Sport, Fitness and Personal Training, is essentially the same as the new one, which is why we've had the 2 no's in these boxes here, because the new one is replacing this qualification. That is the only one that is impacted at the moment. So here's another sort of overview for further qualifications within the BTEC Sports Suite. Just as confirmation, if you're worried about vocational reform, the message is very clear for you to see that things are staying the same for you, for your learners, for the next 2 academic years. So in terms of curriculum planning, this is a confirmation for you, okay? So carry on as you are. If you like the courses, they're working well for you and for your students, you can be confident that funding is in place for the next 2 academic years. In the meantime, we are waiting to hear what's coming back from the review process that's happening to find out if there's any further changes that are required for the alternative academic qualifications and the technicals that we know is going to be something we're going to be producing in the future to meet that particular framework going forward. So that's something we are going to wait to hear from the review. If there's anything we need to do with what we've already planned to produce, and if there's any changes, we will make the changes to qualifications. And as soon as we're ready, we will start to share with you what we're planning to propose and put into the cycle in the future. So this is a long way ahead, just being transparent about what's coming up in the future. So it's not until September 2027 that you need to start thinking about what's going to be happening with new qualifications. We will have shared the information with you long in advance of this. As soon as we have the ability to submit these qualifications, we will start sharing that information with you. So hopefully there's going to be a lot of time for you to prepare for any changes when you need to think about that. But the message is, as I said, really clear. You've got 2 further academic years where you can continue to teach the current courses. For those of you teaching the BTEC National Sport, Fitness and Personal Training, just to be aware, we have got that new qualification that's taking over from the diploma size, but the other 3 sizes will still be available for you to teach. If you are teaching those and want to continue, they will still be available. And here's a quick overview, a nice snapshot in terms of what the BTEC offer is from level 1 through to level 3. So we have got a clear, and we're going to look to present this to you so you can have a clear guide when you're thinking about what you want to offer at your centre for your learners. At level 1, we know the BTEC level 1 introductory in sport award certificate and diploma, that's got funding for a further, at least 2 further years. The level 1s and level 2, the tech award in sport is only for schools, for students aged 14 to 16. But if you are in a college and teach 16 years and older, you could teach them the BTEC First Sport, that's available to you. Or you could move on to the new level 2 suite with the technical occupational entry qualifications, which is shown here in this column. So these are all new, which is why there's an asterisk in 2025 after them. Level 3, these are the ones that are available. You'll probably find your qualification in there and have that confidence that you know you can continue to teach that at least for the next 2 academic years. In terms of training and support, we have got the same training on offer that you'd expect for any launch of new qualifications. We're going to have some getting ready to teach and getting ready for internal assessment. And then we're going to have some transitioning workshops. The main transition really we have in our sector is moving from the diploma personal trainer size, and we've got a lot of support documentation there. It's very, very similar. There's no big surprises there because it's mapped to an occupational standard. So we have been directed by what content can be included. So essentially the transition that we're in, for any of you who are interested in new qualifications or moving from the personal trainer, there's a lot of support available for you if you are in that boat. For those of you teaching BTEC qualifications, just as a reminder, we do have a lot of other support available to you. If you're teaching anything with exams, we know our BTEC Sport and Exercise Sciences has external assessment. If you haven't already discovered them, we've got Exam Wizard, which is a really good tool for producing your own mock assessments. It draws on previous live questions in previous exam papers, and it can build a paper for you. It will also give you the mark scheme that's associated with each question you choose, and also clips from the lead exam reports to give you some really quick and helpful advice in terms of how learners responded to that particular question. In that, you can see that there are certain concepts that learners consistently struggle with to help you guide your teaching. You've also got Results Plus, which is available post-exam to help you really find out where learners did well, and also if there's any areas they needed further support if they are going to be attempting a resit. We've got access to scripts as well, which you may not be aware of. You can access the learner scripts. So many of you are in the situation where learners have perhaps sat an exam in the January exam series. You may want to, once the results have been published, find and access the learner's script to find out which areas they didn't do so well on, how did they respond, and you can see again how to help them with their exam technique. And of course, we have subject advisors. So we have Penny Lewis as our subject advisor, who's there to support in lots of different areas with the BTEC programs. If you're somebody who likes the side of politics and changes in government, vocational reform and things like that, so some of you may want to keep as up to date as possible with that side of things. It may be your job role requires you to keep up to date, or you may just have an interest as an educator yourself. We do have useful links on this that continue to be updated as we find out more information as it's being presented to us. So the updated Level 3 funding guide is your one-stop shop where you can refer back to find out, am I going to get funding for this qualification? How much longer is it going to be available for? And we've already seen that. That's the one with the columns and the green to confirm that funding is available up until at least September 2027. We've also got further links from the Department for Education in terms of what's going on. There is further reviews happening and things like that happening if you are a person who wants to sort of like keep up to date with that. So those are links that you may want to refer to in your free time. In terms of next steps, it really is a waiting game now in terms of what's happening for our sector. Some of you may be teaching in other sectors and want to know what's going on there. We are waiting for cycle 2 to open, but we know that there has been a review in terms of what the alternative academic qualifications should look like and what the technical should look like. So once we've heard back, and once we know the cycle 2 is available for submission, at that point, we can share with you what our submission is looking like. So we're not going to share anything as yet because we don't know if there are going to be changes in the requirements for those particular areas. Okay, that was quite quick, wasn't it? In terms of the messaging, the main message for our sector is really quite it's quite easy to follow on the whole, because we don't have a T level, and therefore our situation is not as complex as perhaps some other sectors within the BTEC framework. Okay, let's have a little look at some questions that are coming in. Oh, before that, I do want to just point out, I think, Penny, you may still be there, but we do have a subject advisor called Penny Lewis, who's there to help and support you if you have any further questions. Further on down the line, you might have some questions related to this or related to anything that you're doing within the BTEC Sport and Exercise Sciences qualifications. There's an email that you can use there, teachingpsport@pearson.com. There's a phone number, and also you may want to book an appointment whereby you can choose a 20-minute slot. The calendar is available on the website that you can be directed to. Choose a 20-minute slot, and then you can have time with Penny to discuss whatever your concerns or questions are. Sometimes you find centres have quite individualised questions and concerns, so it's a really lovely opportunity to get clarification on whatever is sort of your area that you'd like to have support from. Right,
Yeah,
let's have
I'm
a little
here,
look at the
Jenny.
questions that are coming in. Okay, hi Penny.
Hi.
So are
Yeah,
there any questions coming in?
there was just one question which I think I have answered, and that was in September 2026, can learners complete the foundation diploma and then top up to the extended diploma? And I've answered it and said yes, they will be able to start the foundation diploma, but depends on what happens with 27, 28. Depends on what you would need to do. Either you could top them up as normal if the funding is there, but if it isn't, you will be advised to register them on the extended diploma by a certain date.
Lovely, thanks for that, Penny. So, and it's not the first time we've been through this. We went through this. Some of you, if you've been teaching for a little while, you know we had a framework called the QCF. There was a period of time when there was a sort of like a period of time when learners were looking to top up or drop down or things like that, depending on what was happening. So we will provide you with full guidance in terms of what to do as soon as we know when the funding ends for these qualifications. What is the best thing to do for your learners to make sure they do actually end up with the qualification they intended to go to. So that's something we, as I said, we've done it before based on this end point for qualification funding, and we know many centres like to use a top up or a drop down option depending on how well learners are doing. So we can provide you with all the options and what's best to do to make sure you're fully informed and make the right decisions as soon as we know when you need to make those decisions for your learners.
Yeah, and there's just one
Let's
other
see. Oh,
question, okay, but it's really about level 2. I think Richard is asking a question about a learner scripts. They should be for the level 2 component 3 access to scripts. They should be available as far as I'm aware. Okay. Yeah, I think they should be
so that's for
available.
the
Level 2
so
tech
there's a
award.
couple of things going on depending on, so Tech Award is available. If you're looking at
Yeah.
the level 2 first award, they will not be available because those particular external assessments are online and on demand, which means the papers remain live for periods of time. So because of that, if we were to give you back the paper, you'd see live materials. So depending on the level 2 qualification that you are delivering determines whether you have access to scripts because of the nature of that particular external assessment.
Thanks, Jenny.
So yeah, the first award, you aren't going to get those. So we do have scripts available for the majority of, so where they're sat in a sort of like a traditional way, where you have an exam series and results released at either March or August time. If they are the on demand, then you will not get access to those scripts because of the nature of that particular external assessment.